One of the first major projects I started working on when I got hired was a privacy and security evaluation for cloud-based tools that connected to our learning management system. That's a really big project, and I'm still dreaming about privacy and security and, well, privacy policies and the gobbledygook I have to read every day. But I couldn't have done that without certain individuals to help inform me about what to really look for to build that evaluation, one of whom is our own full-time UC San Diego Chief Privacy Officer and privacy advocate, Pegah Parsi. Pegah manages privacy initiatives related to employees, students, applicants, alumni, research participants. She provides guidance for the GDPR, FERPA, HIPAA, California privacy laws, and we know those are really big now, and research, privacy, and common rule. She enjoys the gray privacy issues surrounding learner analytics, big data, AI, and international collaborations. Pegah has extensive experience in federal contracts, clinical trials, and research compliance. Pegah is an attorney and MBA, and in her spare time, she advises clients on immigration and asylum matters. She's also a veteran who, among other things, was the honor grad of Army Truck Driver School. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And most proudly for me, however, I'm happy to call her my friend. Give a warm welcome to Pegah Parsi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the last day of UCTech. Thank you, Miguel. I want to thank all the organizers. This is one of my favorite tech conferences to attend, and I am delighted and honored to come and talk to you about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And of course, that is privacy. Now, I considered what to talk about here today. I conferred with many a great mind about what might be most useful. We are at a tech conference, and typically a topic like privacy is discussed in conjunction with security or data governance. Beyond that, we might associate privacy with things like confidentiality or keeping things walled off, secrecy. We talk about privacy in terms of compromised passwords or leaked embarrassing information about us. Or maybe even data breaches. Outside of tech, privacy is typically discussed in consumer-based language, things like identity theft or fraudulent transactions. Unhelpfully, privacy is sometimes described with reference to creepy ads that we receive after having what we thought was a private analog conversation. At worst, some people say, I don't care about privacy because I have nothing to hide, as if privacy were only about shame and about fame. And of course, they're the people who have thrown up their hands and given up, saying privacy is dead, presumably referring to our current digital age. But I think the fact is that we've lost the forest for the trees when it comes to privacy. It's difficult for most people to assign some sort of measurable, tangible value to privacy. But the concept is abstract. While the concept is abstract to us, and most people can't quite describe a particular privacy harm, it's an incredibly important thing for us to talk about. And of course, organizations sometimes struggle with righting wrongs after a privacy incident, right? Only being able to offer things like credit monitoring, as if my credit were the only thing at risk of being compromised. So I thought it would be a good use of our time here today to go back to the basics and explore why privacy matters, what it means, not just to us as individuals, but to a healthy, thriving democracy. So let's spend our time together on the so what question. So your data are collected. So there's a digital profile of you. So there are algorithms sifting you this way and that way, putting you in this bucket, that bucket, subjecting you to this treatment or that, giving you a risk score. So what? Who cares? The task of answering the so what question has been difficult to convey in concrete terms. But recent events have shed bright light on what we're talking about here and why privacy matters. The answer to the so what question has come into sharper and sharper focus. So it's a good use of our time here today to go back and delve into it just a little bit. But let me back up for just a second. I know some of you know me and many of you don't, so I want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I care about this so much and why I do what I do. I am an immigrant from Iran. The erosion of privacy for someone like me is not theoretical. It's not abstract. It's not far removed, and it's certainly not unimportant. I've always had a slightly different relationship to privacy than most Americans, sure, because I've seen firsthand what can happen when people don't have privacy. Even more importantly, I've seen firsthand what happens to society when people don't have privacy. As Miguel mentioned, I'm also a veteran, and I work with a coalition helping to get at-risk Afghans to safety. For that group, privacy is a matter of life or death in a fundamental sense. And at the societal level, the lack of freedoms and liberties has had a devastating effect, particularly on women and girls. For them, privacy is not a hypothetical issue. It is not a nice to have. I'm also an American, and as an American, I think that the benefits and blessings of liberty should inure to me, and I hold them very dear. So instead of casting privacy in terms of confidentiality, creepiness, security, shame, and fame, let's talk about what's actually at stake here. Let's talk about privacy with reference to its very close cousin, liberty. Privacy is a large part of what we call ordered liberty being the concept that reconciles public order with personal freedoms. I don't take privacy for granted, and neither should you. It's not an abstract issue, certainly not anymore. And even though creepy is indeed a term of art in the privacy profession, the issue is not just about seeing those creepy ads. Erosion of privacy has real-world implications for you, for me, for every single one of us. And so I titled this talk, In Defense of Privacy. But enough about me. Let's talk about a man named Alan Weston. In his 1967 seminal book, Privacy and Freedom, which was written in response to advances in surveillance technology, Columbia professor Alan Weston described privacy as having self-determination to choose how, when, and to what extent information about oneself is shared. Many of you have heard me talk about privacy as having agency and autonomy over oneself. Whether to hide oneself, expose oneself, or curate one's life. Whether or not we subject ourselves to the whims of others. Weston said that privacy provides individuals and groups in society with a preservation of autonomy, a release from role-playing, a time for self-evaluation, and for protected communication. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, a staunch supporter of civil liberties, referred to the autonomous control over the development and expression of one's intellect, interests, tastes, and personality. and basic decisions about one's life respecting marriage, divorce, procreation, contraception, and the education and upbringing of one's children. And finally, a freedom to care for one's health and person, freedom from bodily restraint and compulsion, freedom to walk, stroll, or loaf. These are what make up our fundamental right to ordered liberty and to privacy. So today, I'm going to talk about a recent Supreme Court decision, Dobbs v. Jackson, a case most closely associated with overturning Roe v. Wade about abortion. But that's a narrow understanding of the Dobbs decision. In fact, that's a narrow understanding of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was, after all, a ruling about privacy. Roe was a privacy decision applied to a particular scenario. If we consider the long line of intertwined Supreme Court cases that make up our understanding of our privacy rights, we see more clearly that Roe was, first and foremost, about bodily privacy, having self-determination over our bodies and our lifestyles. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Roe v. Wade sits in the middle of a grouping of intertwined cases that make up our constitutional right to privacy. This is a grouping of interrelated cases, some defining, some expanding, some curtailing, and some clarifying our right to privacy through various amendments in the Constitution. Over the last 100 or so years, the Supreme Court has found our right to privacy and ordered liberty in the First, Third, Fourth, Fifth, and Ninth Amendments, as well as in the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. Sure, Roe is the most famous in this line, but I bet you've heard of some of the others. Loving v. Virginia, Griswold v. Connecticut, Lawrence v. Texas, Obergefell v. Hodges. These all dealt with privacy, where privacy is understood as autonomy to direct one's own life and lifestyle. The 2022 Dobbs v. Jackson decision struck at the very heart of this line of cases. It didn't just say abortion was not a protected right. It instead knocked down the arguments used to protect all of those other things that we value. The court based its decision about whether or not a right is protected by our federal Constitution on whether or not it has been deeply rooted in our history and tradition, and whether it is essential to the nation's scheme of ordered liberty. Regardless of your stance on abortion, the reasoning given here is what we're concerned about. That the Constitution only protects rights that have been deeply rooted in our history and traditions. Let's turn our attention to the other rights we value, those that were protected by the court, because the court found not that they were deeply rooted in our tradition and history, but because they were so central to our broad concept of ordered liberty and of the self. These are cases that applied the concept of the principles of privacy, privacy of the home, privacy of the body, privacy of association, to myriad scenarios. Importantly, those not found to be deeply rooted in our traditions and history. Rights such as interracial marriage, your right to have contraceptives, whether or not you can have and view obscene materials in your home, sodomy laws, and other laws about consensual sexual acts, so-called don't put that there laws. involuntary sterilization and vasectomies, whether grandparents had the right to see your children, whether you can cohabitate with someone that is not a relation, whether marriage can be something other than one man and one woman, whether you can marry while incarcerated, and educating your children in a foreign language. Roe was but one of these, albeit the most well-known and the most controversial because of the subject matter. But bodily privacy isn't just about abortion. It's also about whether or not you participate in medical studies, whether you get drug tested, whether you get vaccinated, whether you create embryos as part of your IVF cycle, or have access to physician-assisted death. It relates to family relations and to marriage and divorce and to education. Things that impact each and every single one of us. These are the things that are at risk when we start stripping away our constitutional right to privacy based on the reasoning in Dobbs v. Jackson. Let me make this even more clear. Dobbs and Roe weren't just about abortion. The implications are not just important to a subset of the population. They were about everyone. And you all have heard me say this. Privacy is not just for criminals. It's not just for whistleblowers or people seeking abortions. It's not just for interesting people or people with things to hide or people who want to cut the cord and go live off in the woods. It's not just for people who have something of which to be ashamed. Instead, understood as part of ordered liberty, privacy is for everyone. It's for progressives and conservatives and nonpartisans. It's for fascists. It's for anti-fascists. It's for Iranians, it's for Afghans, and it's for Americans. It's for boring people, fabulous people, milquetoast people. Privacy is for all of us. And so we should care about the Dobbs decision and what it portends. Let's turn back our focus to the digital. This is a tech conference, after all, not a legal one. Let's talk about our current data-driven world and our digital profiles. A new frontier in our lives, our digital selves. A new thing that didn't exist a mere generation or two ago. There are, of course, digital profiles of all of us. There's a digital me, and there's a digital you. Profiles created through the data you and I are spewing out every single day, with data from every activity we partake in, packaged, repackaged, bought, and sold for a variety of different purposes, not all of which we are aware of. In this new frontier of ourselves, our digital privacy rights have direct impact on the real world, on our in-the-flesh lives. Think about the various things gobbling up my data throughout the day, from the 43 apps that are currently on my phone, collecting everything from my location, to my contacts, to my interests and behaviors, to smart streetlights on my way to campus, to our parking system, the daily symptom screeners, the Wi-Fi system, our LMS, the HR system, my social media presence, my clicks on a website, search history, my location as I drive to a restaurant with a friend, the reservation system used by that restaurant, my Netflix watchings, and of course, whatever gadget is tracking my heart rate, steps, sleep, and menstrual cycle. And of course now, Amazon's Whole Foods wants my handprint. Data is the new oil, No, we understand now that data is the new carbon emission. And of course, this digital profile is valuable. Of course it is. It's valuable to researchers. It's valuable for policymakers, for educators, for advocates. But think of how easily that same digital profile can be used to my detriment. To nudge me, judge me, manipulate me, prosecute me, put me in a bubble, or keep information from me. Make me think, spend, or vote a certain way. The privacy issue with digital Pegah isn't that I may be creeped out by a few ads. The privacy issue with digital Pegah is that it's used to make real-world decisions about me, and digital you being used to make decisions about you. Your insurance rates may go up. Based on what you ask, it's not clear. Maybe some proxy for your race, for your ethnicity, for your lifestyle. You may be denied a mortgage or a marriage license. You may lose access to birth control. You may be bombarded, as is a true case, by traumatic ads when you're in the vicinity of a Planned Parenthood. This was based on geotagging, of course. Or your Facebook information can be turned over to the police to investigate you for exercising your rights to bodily privacy. Know that your data are valuable, and the data you collect as part of your work are valuable, precisely because they have implications for our constitutional rights to privacy and for ordered liberty. So I tell you, UCTech, without equivocation, that you should care about digital you as much as you care about physical you, especially given the reasoning in Dobbs. And I ask you now, do you think that your rights to digital you are deeply rooted in our nation's history and traditions? Do you feel secure that they will be protected? That is what is at stake here. That is the answer to the so what question. And I call on all of you to reflect what ordered liberty and privacy means to you and to take that back to your world and to your work. Not to despair or to panic, but to engage. I urge you to pay attention to this issue from all sides, from the judicial, legislative, ethical, personal, digital, what have you. Pay attention. Recent legislations and proposed bills, yes. Incidents and investigations, of course. Data minimization, yes. But also so much more than that. I urge you to not brush aside privacy as a mere compliance matter or merely a consumer issue. I urge you to follow the proposed federal data privacy legislation. Pay attention, in particular, to what's going on at Town Hall with your privacy and surveillance ordinances that are being passed, giving law enforcement various types of authorities over what they can do with your data. Finally, I urge you to educate the next generation of leaders and workers on the fundamental importance of privacy to our society, and to not view privacy as an obstacle to innovation. If anything, privacy is essential for innovation and for progress. To paraphrase once again Justice Douglas, privacy is understood as the autonomous control over the development and expression of one's intellect. And at this wonderful, wonderful university, what is worth what is worthy of protection more than that? Thank you.
Whew. Who's not panicking? No, you know what? I have been in awe of Pegah and her work with our university since I started working directly with her, and ended up going to one of her privacy workshops that we have on campus, very naively, under the impression that I kind of knew what it was going to be about, and realizing I know nothing. And it was huge for me, being in my 40s and still learning so much. And I must say, like, one of the reasons I really wanted to have this discussion on the last day of this conference is because it can't, like, I'm going to be honest and not sugarcoat it, it can feel like an obstacle to care, or I'll use the word comply, with privacy and security things when it comes to students or HR or all of the stakeholders who we have some level of authority or control over, even if we don't realize it. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that we do have control over a lot of information about our students, our faculty, each other, and to protect each other. So thank you. I really appreciate the talk. But now it's time to pass the buck. I'm going to invite my fellow podcaster, Mark Herzberger, to the